fossil vault, which is the Philip Tobias fossil vault, was inaugurated just, I don't know, it's not even like 6 months ago. And so it, up until November 2013, housed most of the hominid fossil remains in South Africa, and it's some at the Dipsong Museum if you've been there before. But this room basically holds the vast majority of the human fossil.
Into the vault we shall go.
You will also now see that we have considered adding to that material as a result of the Rising Star
In a vault.
project that you have probably seen lots of news on lately. The October issue of National Geographic also features HomoNaledi on the front cover, so whenever that comes out, you'll be able to see that. However, I'll go in and we'll just have a quick tour. How many of you have heard of the tongue child?
Yes, we all have.
Once you
Yeah.
have heard, this is she, the real fossil. Cases on either side of the tongue child are MH1 and MH2. Those are the real fossils of Australopithecus Sediba
Wow.
that Lee Berger found in 2008. So that's a juvenile male on the left and an adult female on the right.
Sure.
Most of the material behind you there in the cases are modern primate materials, so skeletons of apes and monkeys, as well as casts of fossil material from other parts of the world, both East Africa and Asia. Those little brown cases on the far end there basically amount to 50 years of research at Sterkfontein.
Sure.
So that is the complete record of fossil material from Sterkfontein. All the cases 3 deep, going that way, is what we recovered in less than 6 weeks in Rising Star.
Yeah.
So we now have somewhere in the order of 1,700 fossil fragments that have come out of Rising Star, and we're nowhere near done. We managed to excavate a space about the size, a quarter of the size of these 2 tables, so 1 meter and 1 meter, by about 15 centimeters deep.
Sure.
And that's what we got. So you can imagine the amount of material that we were dealing with. Did any of you follow the scientific announcement at Maripeng last week?
Yes.
Okay, so all of that material was transported out to Maripeng in these cases. I'm going to show you what they look like, just because we're actually quite proud of them. Or I am, because I had to cut every single hole. So these are obviously waterproof, shockproof cases that the material came out of, and the actual fossils are still at Maripeng, and they'll be there for another month for display. But basically what we did was I cut little holes for every single fossil that we took out to Maripeng. So that was in the order of, I don't know, 500 little squares that I had to cut out. Anyway, so when they go back and forth from Maripeng to here, they get transported in these cases by a blue light brigade, because this is South African national heritage, and this belongs basically to the world. So we are very, very careful when we move this material. But yeah, so the Rising Star material basically amounts to that so far. As you can see, the little cases that we have them in are actually layered 3 deep at the moment. So it's a lot of material. As your instructor said, I was one of the primary excavators. So I was one of the underground astronauts, that they like to call us. I found out about the project through a Facebook ad that my supervisor sent to me. And I don't know, I got it on the 6th of October, and by the 6th of November I was here in the project. So we did a month of excavation then. 6 women were chosen to be the primary excavators. We get a lot of questions about why it was women. Partly its size. We needed to be able to get through an 18 centimeter pinch point in one of the passages. Now that's not like an 18 centimeter diameter hole, obviously. Very few of us would fit through that. But what it is a long crack that has a pinch point partway through that you have to be able to get. You can't get your helmet through, but you can get your neck through as long as your feet are stable and you kind of slide sideways and drop down. Anyway, it is a very physical excavation. The 6 of us worked in shifts of sort of 2 to 3 people, anywhere between 4 and 6 hours a day for a month, and that's how we got all the material out. After that, Becca Peixoto, one of the other excavators, and I did another round of excavation in March of 2014 and brought out some of the rest of the material, in particular that articulated hand that you have seen that's part of the holotype came out at that time. Then in May of 2014, we did a 6-week-long intensive workshop to describe and analyze all the material, and that involved some 40 researchers from around the world. So we basically brought them all here and said, you know, what's your anatomical specialty? Are you a hand guy, a foot guy, a head person, you know, whatever. Put them into teams and had them do the description and analysis. So that took 6 weeks. And as you just saw, we did the final scientific announcement of that material just last week, and that came out in eLife. So that's an open access journal that we chose because, in part, it's open access. This material, as I said, is world heritage. I think you should be very proud that it's a South African find, but it is also world heritage. So we wanted everybody to be able to access the information and the materials. So any person who's interested and willing can read those articles, they can understand them, they can ask questions, they can in fact download the shape files of the skeletal material, print them out on their own 3D printer if they've got one, or borrow someone else's, and actually have a cast of that material themselves. So that for us was really important, to try and make sure that that information and material was accessible to everybody. Yeah, and then since then I actually moved here full-time from Canada last October. I finished my PhD. I was actually doing my PhD when the first project happened. I finished my PhD and took a postdoc position here with Lee in October, and I've been here almost a year now, and hopefully another year and potentially beyond. The first round of excavations in November 2013 were actually followed. We had a National Geographic photographer and sound guy embedded with us, and we had them blogging every day about the project.
Sure.
People got to see images of us in the cave. People got to see a lot of what it took to be part of that project. What we kept aside was the actual fossil material itself. Okay. So we didn't show any images of the fossils at that point, and we didn't talk about, at that point, you know, how much material we were dealing with, what we were dealing with in terms of the new species, or what some of the context meant. So that part was relatively easy to keep under wraps, particularly during the first expedition. I don't think any of us really had any idea what we were getting ourselves into. I mean, we all thought it was going to be like a 3-week-long project. It would be a salvage operation. We'd be in and out, and everybody would continue on with their little lives, but that didn't really happen.
Studying paleontology, what did you do as an undergrad?
Yeah, well actually I had a fairly circuitous career. As you can tell, I'm probably a little bit older than your average fresh graduate. So I actually did a certificate in veterinary nursing before. So I actually practiced veterinary medicine, exotic animals and critical care emergency medicine for almost 8 years before I twisted off and decided to get into anthropology. But I went back to university just because I was interested to do so. Got into anthropology, got into physical anthropology because I already had the anatomy and physiology background from vet med. And just thought, oh, I like humans, they're super interesting. I've always been interested in evolutionary studies and human origins research, so that kind of meshed nicely. So my undergraduate degree was actually in archaeology and biological anthropology.
Okay.
Then my master's was also in biological anthropology and my PhD in biological anthropology. So I also, one of the reasons that I managed to get on Lee's team as well is that I had been a climber and a caver for many years before, even like just as a sport. So you never know really where your personal interests might take you in terms of your academic interests. So, you know, it's always good to do extracurricular stuff and just have a wide range of interests, because you never know how it's going to all come together in something you want to do. So,
It's definitely a lot we're hearing today is diversify and
yeah.
be as open as possible to as many different
try
fields.
as many new things as you can. I mean, all of you, I guess, are sort of interested more or less in the geosciences or sciences generally, and that's awesome. I mean, obviously things like math and biological sciences, biology, chemistry, physics are all super important, but don't neglect a good broad education. Enjoying the arts is awesome, and you never know where that kind of stuff actually might lead you, because there aren't a ton of jobs in all of these disciplines. I mean, I was finishing my PhD and thought I wasn't sure that I was going to get a job at all in anthropology, never mind paleoanthropology, because it's very competitive. But, you know, you don't know where you're going to land. And sometimes you can have a degree in something that you're interested in, even if you don't necessarily practice academically. You can be doing something for corporations, or you can be doing teaching, you know, informally. So I think the important thing to remember now, particularly, is that a broad skill set is excellent, a broad interest range is excellent, but just keep your options open too. I mean, just because you get a degree in something doesn't mean you have to follow an academic pathway. There are lots of ways to use your education fruitfully in other disciplines. So, yeah.
Caving, like, that scares me.
It scares most people, yeah.
Yeah.
It scares me occasionally too.
You don't get claustrophobic? No.
I don't. No, I realized very early in life that I don't know that I have a fear factor, which is probably not good for some things. Yeah, I don't have a fear of heights. I don't have claustrophobia. There have been times when I thought I really should.
You're worried about the situation.
I'd be worried about the situation, but knock on wood, I have never had a serious accident. And it's interesting. Probably more than any other sport, caving is one of those things that you do because it really is going into the unknown in a lot of ways. Sometimes you know that another caver's been into an area, but sometimes you don't. And it's both a psychological challenge in terms of, you know, can I handle this space? And then it's also a physical challenge in, you know, okay, well, now I'm going to have to take my helmet off to get through this hole, or now all my gear is going to have to come off. And now, you know, all this, and then there's the physical aspect just of squeezing yourself through these holes. I mean, you see, I'm scarred all over, but yeah, that's a life of just being, you know, being adventurous, and I don't think there's any harm in just being curious, and that's usually what gets most people into adventuring or doing stuff. It's just sheer curiosity. Where does this go? What does that do? I mean, it's Isaac Asimov or whoever said, you know, most great scientific discoveries in the world are not, you know, preceded by Eureka, I found it, but by that's funny. You know, because curiosity is really what drives most of these innovations. So yeah, just be curious.